Hello, everybody. I'm Russ Danner, VP of Products here at CrafterCMS, and I'm super excited to share some of the great things that we've been working on with you. We have a short session. It's only 30 minutes. I'm going to need all of those to cover this material, so I'm going to focus on a few key areas. What we're going to do with the Q&A is we're going to move it all to the engineering Q&A session led by Sumer Debris, our CTO, so save them till then. It's right after this session. Now, here are the topics that we're going to cover in this session. We're going to start out by talking about the authoring experience in Crafter Studio. We're going to follow that up by talking about composable digital experiences. And then we're going to talk about generative AI for content authors and creators. We're going to follow that up with Dev Content Ops. And then we're going to finish out with security and reliability. So let's get started with content editing. And as you know, Crafter CMS is a headless CMS. And headless CMSs, they don't have the best reputation for content editing in the industry. And the reason for that is sort of by design because they're headless, they're API driven. And so they're not visual by nature. And as a result, the forms and the spreadsheet-like interfaces that have been developed, they have that sort of spirit of presentationless content entry. And the preview, if you want to see how your content's going to look, is really sort of a mock-up, or you've got to deploy your content into a specific environment. And so authors find this really clunky when they compare it to the traditional editing and the publishing experience that they had with web CMSs, right? Now, the sort of excuse is that this is multi-channel content and it has to be this way, but at Crafter, we don't believe that at all. We've focused really hard on building very visual, point and click, drag and drop style capabilities that we call the experience builder. You shouldn't be forced to use a form or a spreadsheet-like interface if that's not the best interface for the job. So we're not going to do that at Crafter. We believe that content editing needs to be easy. And most of the time, that means that it needs to be visual. At the same time, it would be pretty easy to build visual tools if we didn't take into account some enterprise concerns. And at Crafter, we've really looked at those enterprise concerns and we've focused on them and we built them in. So I want to share them with you because it's behind the scenes. You can't see it, but it's really important. The first one is that we need to be able to support different delivery channels and different types of experiences. And we need to be able to do that with any technology. And this is important because inside of an organization, we often have different technologies for the same use case across different departments. We need to be able to change technology over time. So we might have some overlap. So the CMS needs to be able to support that. And if we can't do different technologies or different types of experiences, then we don't really have a multi-channel CMS. So there are some CMSs that are really sort of specialized for specific types of front-end frameworks, but they are not good in a multi-channel sort of story. So Crafter, we've really tried to address this. Another thing is structured, reusable, and searchable content. This is really important when it comes to things like SEO and support for emerging technologies like AI. And most importantly, structured content is important for reusability. So behind the scenes, Crafter captures all of your content as individual fields in documents so that it can be reused in any channel, in any context. And that's extremely powerful, and an enterprise needs that. And related to this requirement is a very clean separation between code and content. If you cannot cleanly separate the content itself from the presentation of that content or the code that drives the experience, then you cannot really reuse the content across different channels. So clean separation of code and content is critical for enterprise-grade headless CMSs with visual editing. Now, I've shared some of these concerns, so let's take a look at what a truly technology agnostic in-context editing experience looks like. Now, we're going to start off with some simple content editing. And you can see here, we just find the content that we want to edit, we highlight it, and we start editing it. We're editing in our styles. It's simple, it's easy, and it's fun. What about functional things like this call to action? Just as easy. Point and click, make your edits. Now, let's take a video from our desktop. Let's drag that onto the screen here. You can see it highlights the area. We drop it, video uploads, and it immediately starts playing. It's that easy. How cool is that? It's pretty cool, right? Now, let's scroll down a little bit here. And let's add an image. So we're going to drag an image in, and it's just as easy as the video. All right, now let's edit some copy here. And you can see this is a rich text editor. So in this case, authors do have a little bit of control over the style, and every one of those capabilities there is configurable by you. So you can see that in-context editing is very powerful. It's easy to use, super important. Another cool feature is design assist editing adjustments. So let's take a look at these, as it's easier to see than it is to just kind of share. So you can see here, I'm going to grab an image, and you see I drag it over this area here, and it's really easy to just drop it, right? But that's a simple use case. In the real world, we have rollovers and hovers and other kinds of design elements that designers love to incorporate into our experience. And the problem with that is these can kind of get in the way of the editing experience. So Design Assist allows us to give cues to the design, and that tells it that when we're in the edit mode, to kind of spread those elements out so that we can easily get in and edit that content. And then when we're done editing, we simply bring the mouse out, turn editing off, and the entire experience goes back to the way that our end users see it so that we can preview it again in context. And this is a really powerful little bit of kit that makes editing really easy, even in sophisticated designs. We've also added searchable asset libraries. So here you can see that we've made it really easy to find content. You can see a keyword search here to find an image. You can see a preview of it. You pick it up, you drag it out onto the screen and put it where you want it. So these libraries are very easy to use and very powerful. Also, drag and drop support is intelligent. CrafterCMS knows where your regions are. If, for example, if we go in and grab a component here that doesn't belong in this area on the screen, it's not going to give us a drop zone. But if we grab a component that does belong here, we can drop it. And you can define the rules of where content can be dropped and different types of content, and Crafter will enforce those rules for you. So we drop that content there, and now we can start to fill it out. So we'll find an image, we'll drag that out, drop it, and you can see again, the image knows where it can go. We drop it in place, and we're off to the races. Another great capability is the new authoring search. And you can see here, it's a very attractive new interface. You can see previews of everything that you're looking for. It's really powerful. I don't have time to go through this whole video. It's a little bit longer, but you can see there's filters down the left-hand side, all different types of filters. You've got multi-level sorting, and we've really improved previews. So I can preview images and pages, and I can use search to launch individual actions and bulk actions. So I think you're going to love this new authoring search. We also now support dark mode for users who prefer that kind of interface. And another great feature is the new dashboards. Again, we might have a little bit more video here than we have time for, but let's jump into these dashboards. You can see they're super beautiful. They're tile-based. We've added some new tiles for metrics like Dev Content Ops metrics. We've added this whole team activity feed down the right-hand side. And you can see some of the tiles or some of the dashboards that you're used to seeing, but they're much more attractive and much more easy to use today. If we scroll down here, we can see more of those. Each of these tiles has its own pagination. It's got great filters that are context aware. So you can see some of that here. And you can also expand any one of these tiles to take over the entire dashboard if you want to work completely in that context. So really powerful stuff. All right, now what's next in authoring experience? Let's start with one that I'm super excited about, and that is the content modeling and form engine update that we have in progress right now. What you can expect from this is a whole new content modeling tool that's going to really improve individual field typing and reuse. You're going to be able to relate different fields to each other, and you're going to be much more efficient with content modeling. Another great thing that's going to come out of this is that there's going to be a whole new programming model for those of you who want to extend the form engine with React. So it's going to be even easier to create really neat and useful use case specific controls for the form engine for both forms and the experience builder. This is essential. This is a critical update here. We're super excited to share more of this this year in the coming months. Another major addition in the works is a recycle bin. The recycle bin will enhance content deletion and reversion use cases. Deletes will share the same workflow benefits of content creation and edit operations, and authors will have a better interface for reverting deletes. Another common thing that we're hearing from our customers is a need for more bulk operations in terms of studio tools and APIs. So we're going to be adding support for those as well. Now, let's move on to our next focus area, which is composable. Now, there's so much buzz about composable architectures in the industry today, and we think it's an important evolution beyond headless and beyond mock architecture. So it's something that we're working on incorporating into our platform. CrafterCMS, as its name implies, at its heart is a CMS, and it can fit into any composable DXP or digital experience platform as that CMS capability. DXP is so much more than CMS and includes components like search and digital asset management and workflow and SEO and personalization. So you're free to use whatever capability you want for those aspects of your DXP in a composable DXP architecture. It's also important to understand that CrafterCMS provides really robust search and personalization and workflow and other common DXP capabilities packaged right out of the box. And you can find other capabilities and plug them into your experience from our marketplace. Inside of our marketplace, we have plugins for the authoring experience and the delivery experience, and you can compose exactly what you need and specialize your environment from that marketplace with these plugins. But that's not to say that just because you have a marketplace and plugins that your CMS is composable. That's not the case, and that's not what we're trying to say here. We're saying that in order to be composable, a CMS like CrafterCMS has to have plugins in a marketplace that meet specific requirements that make it composable. So what am I talking about? Well, it's about integration fundamentals. Your package capabilities need to supply APIs and hooks and events, and not only supply them, but also be able to react to inbound calls. At this time, the industry doesn't really have a composable standard for these types of things. So we want to have SDKs inside of specific ecosystems to make sure that building package capabilities is easy and consistent within that ecosystem. Another key attribute is self-contained but interoperable experiences. So built-in micro front ends that can interact with other package capabilities and their micro front ends. So plugins need to be able to consume and produce events and APIs and hooks. They need to have a self-contained data model, and where applicable, they need to have built-in experiences. And where it gets interesting is because you have this kind of mechanics where you've got APIs and events and so on, and you can produce them and respond to them, then you can be recombined with other capabilities in novel ways. Ways that as a capability provider, I don't even need to think about, right? I just decide what I'm going to react to and what I'm going to announce or how I'm going to interact. And it's up to the person assembling to decide how the solution is really going to work and how these are going to be connected based on those attributes. So super powerful here. And this is the critical piece of the concept here. And then there's one more bit, which is if we're going to be composable, we must have discrete packaging and discoverability. Personally, I think that as the industry matures around composability, because of discoverability, we're going to see much more AI-powered low-code solutions based on assembling packaged capabilities as if they were sort of Legos, right? The reason for this is that it's much more maintainable than what we have today, which is sort of bespoke generated code that's created by the AI. This can be hard to maintain over the long haul, whereas packaged business capabilities assembled by an AI is much more attainable and much more efficient. So given this, packaging and discoverability will only grow in importance. Now, let's take a look at some examples from our marketplace. And let's start with some use cases on the authoring side and see how we can specialize the authoring environment. So we're going to start with this advanced workflow built with Trello. And this is a great example where we've got our integrations communicating with exactly the types of things we've talked about, APIs, events, hooks, and so on. And you can see here in Studio that I just moved a card in Trello and I see it reflected here in Studio. This is not an iframe of that Trello board that we see in the background. This is a true React-based integration with Crafter Studio, and it includes some Crafter Studio capabilities. Now, just to show a little bit of the integration here, you can see if I search for a background image in Trello, let's choose cheese here. If I then select that and I go back to Studio, in a few seconds, boom, there's a hook and we have updated the background in Studio. I can create cards in Studio and see them in Trello. I can move cards in Studio and see that in Trello. I can attach documents and content. If I'm in Studio as an author, I can do more content editing capabilities from within Crafter. Now, the real power of a capability like this is that I don't have to teach everybody across my organization or outside my organization that I'm partnering with, like an agency, how to use my CMS. I tell them, hey, you've got experience with something like Trello. Go ahead and use that. And you can integrate with our workflow in a very easy way. And then for the team that needs to be inside Studio for things like publishing, they can use the Trello integration in Studio and stay in context with their content. Really powerful stuff. Another cool example is bulk edit. So here you can see this is like a spreadsheet style experience for editing content. And sometimes you've got a single word that you need to change across a lot of different content, or you've got a number of the same content items of the same type that you want to edit all at once. And in this case, that kind of user interface is invaluable. How about Yoast SEO? This is a great plugin. SEO is so important for public-facing websites. And the Yoast SEO plugin helps you make sure you understand the tone of your content, get a grade on your SEO for that content, make sure you've got great keywords. And because it has direct integration with the Yoast backend, it helps you keep up to date with the algorithm at Google because they are constantly monitoring changes there. And so this sort of dynamically updates to keep you in line with best practices at Google. Really cool integration. Now, let's talk about some examples on the delivery side. And I'm going to go through these pretty quick, but let's look at the first one here. This is a HubSpot plugin, and it allows us to have lead forms inside of Crafter. We can just drag and drop them onto a page just like any other component. And so we can design forms in HubSpot and add them to pages very simply in our experiences via Crafter Studio. Another great example that Mike mentioned earlier is chatbots. And you can see we've got a ton of those. They're super easy to add, and they instantaneously add that chat communication with your customers to any digital experience. Really great stuff. Now, we can spend the rest of the session talking about plugins, but we have a ton of ground to cover and not a lot of time. So I'm going to move to what's next for Composable. And what's next is more plugins. Not to make a joke, but basically we see a need to continue to add real enterprise use cases to our marketplace and make these integrations easy for you to add to both authoring and delivery. We also accept community-based plugins, as we saw from Carson's presentation, and we're super excited to see how you're innovating and what you want to add to the marketplace. So anybody can contribute. We curate those, and again, we're excited to see what you'd like to contribute. We're also adding new ways to install plugins. So today you can install plugins from the marketplace, you can install them locally through our CLI, and we're adding an ability to install an individual plugin from a remote Git repository. And I think that's going to really help with organizations that maintain libraries of plugins that are not for public consumption. Also, we're going to continue to improve our API and event support. This is key to the Composable story, and we're just going to keep iterating on that and making more and more events and adding more APIs so that you can build powerful, integrated experiences with our existing capabilities. Okay, it's time for our next topic, which is generative AI for content authors. And I'm going to start by just jumping into some demos. Let's do that. So we're going to start here with ChatGPT assisted content authoring. And I'm going to scroll down here, and let's say I want to write this description here. So I'm going to click on the description, and I'm going to click our AI assistant. This is a ChatGPT integration you can see here. I'm going to choose my tone. I want a serious business tone. And I'm going to ask the assistant here to help me write a description for a rider safety oriented, family oriented track day organization. So we'll go ahead and write that prompt and we'll send that in, and ChatGPT will send us back. Whew, that's quite a description there. We got something there. So we're going to say, hey, you know what? Can you make this shorter for me? So here you can see it's a little bit more conversational. Okay, that's pretty good. Now we can tell it, well, you came up with a name, but we have a name. All right, now let's see, we can make it more about riding and so on. So we're going to refine that experience. And now we're going to make it even shorter. You can see this again, a conversational sort of interaction there. And so we're just going to feed back information to the chat GPT client here. And once we find something that we like, we insert it. And of course, just to keep things real, maybe I didn't like that one word there, so I'm going to edit it. Here's another cool example, which is AWS AI-enabled workloads, specifically in this case, character recognition inside of images. And our use case here is sports photography. Now, if you know anything about sports photography, you know that photographers take thousands and thousands of photos of different players and action scenes and so on. People are moving fast. It's a hard job, so you take a lot of photos. And then you've got to sort those photos by player numbers, usually based on their jersey. Or in our case, with the motorbikes here, we're going to use number plates, okay? So let's get started. So you can see here we've got some images. We're just going to take a few and we're going to pick those up and drop them into Crafter Studio. And so those images get uploaded into Crafter Studio and they're also sent to AWS, and our AWS recognition job is kicked off. And you can see we've already started to detect some images here with different confidence intervals. So we were saying here that we see bike number 70 and 22, and we certainly see bike 22 there. Here we're saying that we see bike number 52 with a high degree of confidence, and we see that, but it didn't detect number 33. So let's check that out. Let's see what we can do about that. Because we're AI enabled and assisted, here we have a chance to interact. So we'll add 33 to this photo and move it into that gallery. And that kind of shows, again, the plugin here. It's not just an automated workload. All right, scrolling down here, we see a couple of other examples, some more examples here. And here's another great example, which is on the back of a jersey, just to show you that it understands any kind of numbers there, even when they're wrapped around the rider's body and so on. So this is really powerful stuff, and it's saving hours and hours of work. Now, what's next for AI support in CrafterCMS? Well, to start, we're going to be supporting new content types and new media types, right? We've got great support for copy and other asset types. We're going to keep adding to those. Another thing that we're going to do is we're going to do AI-assisted content creation. So what we showed was field by field content creation and generation. What we're going to be moving towards is whole content types. Create me an article, create me a whole blog, and making that a conversational experience. And we're going to be introducing custom LLM integration. So you're going to be able to take your foundational LLM and that model and combine your own content from Crafter Studio and your domain model into that model to create a custom LLM. And that's going to help us customize your prompts and make contextualized prompts, and also give you a customized LLM that's going to be much more specific to your particular use case, your tone, and your terminology. Okay, we've got a lot of ground to cover, and we still have 2 topics to go. So let's get right into them. The first one is Dev Content Ops. And I'm just going to explain a little bit about Dev Content Ops, and then we'll talk about what we're doing for it. So when we think about digital experience and the CMS, it's obvious to sort of think about the main constituent of the CMS as a content author. But in today's modern digital experience, it takes more than content authors to create and deliver and manage digital experiences. In fact, it takes a team of authors, development, and operations in order to make that happen. And even more so today, we see that AI plays a role with each of these roles in some way, assisting them with their daily tasks. And in addition to that, we also see for sophisticated digital experiences, a lot more automation being put in place. So the CMS really needs to take into account All of these things because they're all users of the CMS. And in addition to that, when we get into development and operations, we also have multiple environments. So for example, we have dev, where developers initially do their integration testing for the functionality. And when that's ready, then they move it on to QA. And then of course, ultimately out to production. So there's multiple environments that this work spans. And we want to be able to bring all of these different constituents and these environments together in a nice, seamless, and frictionless way. And the way that we do that at Crafter is through Git. Git is our backbone, and it allows each of these constituents to interact with the CMS in a seamless way using tools that they are familiar with and comfortable with in order to collaborate. So what are we doing next in the area of dev content ops? Well, let's start with updates to Crafter Studio and Git integration. We're improving the way that Studio works with Git under the hood. Specifically, we're updating what and how we track Git in Crafter Studio and how we interact with Git during publishing. And this will improve large dev content ops, content back, and code forward operations. We're also working on performance improvements for large operations like duplicating existing projects and performing bulk publishing operations. And finally, we're giving authors a better visibility into the Git under Crafter Studio. So they're not going to need to know anything about Git, but they are going to have a better view of the Git history. And the dev content ops team, specifically the ops team, is going to have access to what we call the Git log. So we're adding APIs and UI support for that. Our last topic for this update is security and reliability. Now, security is more important than ever before. And the pace at which software moves is accelerating quickly to keep up with and ahead of threats. So CrafterCMS is making major investments in these areas. First, we address security at an architectural level. Everything from the way that we deploy authoring and delivery as separate components to the layers of our implementation. So here you can see that we have private services and then public services and then controllers around that. There's layers there. There's also a security layer of semantic security and then authorization on top of that and then authentication. And that's built right into the architecture of CrafterCMS. So security is part of the platform's construction. We're also constantly working on improving our development processes and practices and policies regarding security in order to meet industry standards like SOC 2. We also work with external researchers to detect vulnerabilities. And just like any sophisticated software project, we rely on a supply chain of libraries and dependencies. And as we've seen in the last few years, that sometimes dependencies are an attack vector. We're also a CNA with MITRE, which enables us to manage vulnerability announcements and the timing of those announcements responsibly for our customers. We've made major investments into our supply chain monitoring, reporting, and security-focused testing. We use only trusted sources to obtain our dependencies, and we scan, manage, and test our software and our supply chain for vulnerabilities on a nightly basis. Now, I'm going to quickly move to what is coming next in this area for security and reliability. So, in Crafter 4.2, we're going to be introducing Java 21. Which is going to greatly extend the long-term support for Java on the platform. It's also going to introduce a number of great performance improvements, language support, and of course, security and vulnerability mitigation. We're also going to be upgrading our Spring framework support from 5 to 6, which is again going to really extend the long-term support for Spring and introduce a lot of benefits in terms of performance, features, and mitigation for vulnerabilities. Speaking of upgrades, we're continuing to invest in easier upgrades. Security is an area that is forcing all software to move faster these days, and we recognize that upgrades need to be as easy as possible. The introduction of the Upgrade Manager in Crafter 4.0 was a really big help. But we're continuing to push for easier, more seamless updates. And along with that, we're continuing to work on our release process to make sure that we capture important changes and communicate them through our documentation and our release notes. And lastly, we're going to be introducing a trust center for customers where you can access important security scan artifacts like the VEX reports and our software bill of materials, as well as compliance documents, policies, and process documentation. Okay, we've made it to the end here. We've covered a ton of ground, and I hope you found that interesting. I also hope that you're as excited about where we're headed as I am. You may have some questions. We're going to take those in the next session, which is coming up now. Thanks for sharing your time with me, and I will see you at the CrafterCMS Engineering Leadership Roundtable.